Welcome into Healing Pathways, where I, Corey Newlieb from Pathway Life by Corey, go over various methods and ways that you can address your own healing journey. Today, we are going to be going over healing with magic, spellcraft, spell work, whatever you want to call it, energy work. Energy work is something a little bit different, but we're mainly going to be focusing more on magic today. And to speak on that with me, I have Larina from Metaphysical Alignment. That's what we've settled on, right?
We've settled on Larina Alignment,
Larina
or
Alignment.
Larina
Okay.
Aligns, but it's few and far between. I'm still in the middle of like changing my name's over and rebranding, so you'll find me soon. I think I'm gonna stick with Larina Aligned for a while, so yeah.
Okay. So we have Larina Aligned here with us,
Mhm.
and she's going to be helping us talk about magic and spellcraft. And I know that's something that you practice on a pretty regular basis and through various methods, be it energy work, be it using astrology. Now that you have some information on astrology, there's a lot of different ways that we can incorporate magic. So we've got a lot of different avenues that we can kind of walk down today. But before we kind of jump into that, um, tell us a little bit about your history with magic.
Yeah, absolutely. As you were introducing, actually, you mentioned energy healing, and I think that's where my magic started. I'm gonna be honest. I think it was necessary for me to like get in touch with myself energetically first, before I even
Hmm.
understood witchcraft or spell casting or spells or any kind of energy healing or any kind of magic healing. So it did kind of start there. But as I grew up, I realized a lot of things regarding magic and things regarding energy worked better when you used physical things. And that's how I delved into witchcraft. That's how I delved into spells. Because spells have physical objects and vocal like I guess quotes or phrases or spells
That
that
go along with it.
yeah exactly that you use and for humans I feel like that makes it easier and quite literally it puts more action to what we're trying to manifest or what we're trying to create.
Okay, and I think that brings up like a really great, I guess, starting point
Hmm.
of what is magic, right?
Yeah.
And at least to my belief or my understanding, and tell me your understanding if it's the same afterwards, but my understanding, magic is simply using the energy within you to essentially create paths around you for you to walk down, right? It's not suddenly manifesting a car out of nowhere, right? It's
Yeah.
manifesting the job that'll get you the pay that'll eventually get you that car, right?
Yes. Yes, I completely agree. It would be awesome if it was I'm gonna close my eyes and I'm just gonna think of the car and it's just gonna appear. Like that
I've
would be
got a Lamborghini
amazing.
outside.
That would be amazing. That is the theatrical version of magic, I believe. But no, it is not that. It takes a little bit longer. It takes a lot more work. We're human beings. We're here to do human physical things. And we can't just make things happen. That's not how the world works, right? Unfortunately, unfortunately. Right. But I would say that when it comes to magic, it is the energy within you and the energy that you put in.
Yes.
Yes, it is using things to connect to your subconscious, like candles, like color types, to connect to what's important to you. You want to make more money. Maybe you associate money with green. So now you light a candle because fire activates the subconscious mind. Maybe you light a green candle and you think about what you want to achieve. And then you let that thought go and you start taking the actions towards that. But your subconscious is already working on it because you started to do that spell. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah, and it kind of reminds me, if anybody's familiar with Carl Jung, however you
Yeah.
want to say it,
Yeah.
and his theory on the collective
The-
subconscious,
yeah, the
right?
collective unconscious. Yes.
Yes, the
Yes.
collective unconscious. Thank you.
Yes.
And it kind of brings me back to that, right? Because when we kind of hone in on certain archetypes,
Mm-hmm.
that's when we can really advance our magic further. Like you said, with the red, right? Maybe with
Mm-hmm.
or with that green candle, the
Yeah.
green candle being magic or money, right? Honing in on those archetypes and being able to tap into collective energies through said
Mm-hmm.
archetype. I think that's a
Yeah.
parallel that we can see between
Yeah,
science and magic
1,000%.
there.
1,000%. The
So
archetypes, putting a character to anything, well, especially when you're trying to reach that goal or reach or be that person to reach that goal, will get you there faster, especially if that character or that energy you connect to or you resonate with.
yes.
Yeah.
So with that being said, what kind of different magic are there? So we've talked about like, okay, there's a bunch of different magic.
Yes.
So it's almost like limitless, right?
Yeah, it is
Am
very
I
much so limitless. I do want to say, to a certain extent, right now I'm doing deity work, right? And deity work is essentially the archetype work where you tap into different deities or you think about, let's just say, use the term think about, right? You think about different deities because this is easier, I feel like, to understand than saying, oh, you conjure up different deities, right?
yeah,
It's the same thing, but you're
but
thinking
a little
about
bit different.
different deities and you're learning their characteristics and you're embodying those characteristics. So through my some of my magic when we do deity work, we're learning about the gods or goddesses, and then we're embodying the characteristics of those gods and goddesses. We're bringing them up, we're thinking about them or imagining them, and how they would interact with us, and then we're applying that. I've come to this realization that that archetype with like deities works with anything, right? So
Mm,
you can not just use deities. I have a client right now that their favorite cartoon is Adventure Time. Okay. And so what
okay.
we're doing is we're going into deep meditation where they've bought they have like Adventure Time like pop bundled, you know, those pop like toys, they're like toys in a box.
Yes,
They
yes.
have those, right? And like that's their grounding tool, is because they're so connected to one of the characters from, I think his name is Jake from Adventure Time. They're so connected to
Yeah.
him that they use that as their ground. It's hilarious, I know, and it sounds so silly, but it's what resonates with them the most. And they know Jake is smart, but he's free. He likes to do things for himself, and they're not the type of person to necessarily just do things for themselves. So what they're doing is they're embodying the characteristics of Jake. And so when it comes to like different kinds of magic, realizing that you could use, like you said, literally anything to embrace and embody the energy of that character or of that thing you resonate with to get to the point that you want to get to, allows for your spells to come to life.
Okay, so essentially magic is intention.
Yes, 1,000%.
Okay.
In simpler words, absolutely.
I love that. So that basically is the premise that we're going to be working at here is magic is intention, and with the intention of healing,
Hmm.
magic can be extremely profoundly useful. Like the
A
examples that you've
thousand
already
percent.
given.
A
Like
thousand
you
percent.
that person that you had with that oh, I
The
know what you're
Jake
talking about.
Adventure
The
Time, yeah.
Adventure Time Jake. Yeah.
They're called
Um
pop. I don't know. They're called pop things. I don't know.
oh, things.
It's. I have one here, but it just says pop on it. So.
Yeah, that's okay. I know what you're talking about. The
Yeah.
things with like they're the cartoon characters, but
Hmm.
it is extremely deep when you are able to have an energetic connection with something, with someone, with some place, and be able to tap into that as a way of kind of grounding yourself and a way of rooting yourself. And I feel like a lot of people do that without even really experiencing that, right? Maybe you
Hmm.
have a specific spot near the lake where just the sounds, the energy of the sounds itself pulls you.
Yes.
And that in of itself the intention of allowing the water to carry away your troubles, right?
Yeah.
That in of itself is a form of
Yeah.
magic.
It's a spell. I want to or it could be a spell or it could be a ritual. Going to that lake. That's a ritual. It's something that you do probably consistently because you feel calm and you want that calmness feeling to come to you and you know where it's at. So you put that intention to feel that feeling and then you go to the place where you feel that feeling the most.
Yes,
It's magical. It sounds, and I always say this to people, it sounds like, oh, that's all it is, but I
but
promise
it
you, when
really
you
is.
jump into the spiritual world, you're gonna have a lot of that realization most of the time is, oh, that's all that is. But it's beautiful in itself, you know?
Yes.
I want to say, funnily enough, I didn't think that my fiance was huge into magic. Like, I didn't think that that was his thing, and he still like tells me it's not. But he has explained to me in one really cool instance that he does his own spells, and I was like, how? Like, what are you talking about? He's like, he was like, he we had this big thing with some people we no longer wanted to talk to, and he had posted, hey, like, some stuff that would like push them away a little bit, and he's like, through my words, they're gone. We don't deal with them anymore. And he's like, that intention that he set gave him the result that he was looking for. And it's just like, oh, like, even in the smallest increments, like in this with the smallest things that you can do, you are laying down spells.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, it really is. And that reminds me of a concept. I don't know if you've ever heard of this podcast. There's a podcast. I think you can find it on YouTube somewhere. It's called the Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot.
Hmm.
And it essentially tells how we all create almost energetic ripples, right?
Hmm.
And the crossover of those energetic ripples with each other is what creates our reality. And this is putting it in very simple layman's terms. We
Yeah.
took an hour and a half
Yep.
podcast and we turned that into a 5 second
Yeah.
statement. So there's going to be a lot of information missing there. But it essentially, the concept is if you take a drop of water in a still lake over here and a drop of water in a still lake over here, the ripples, when they collide, they create this grid, right?
Hmm.
This grid that from our perception creates the ripples, the energy they're
Yeah.
crossing over each other. And that's essentially is what magic and energy is in our real life, right?
Hmm.
It's us creating our own energy, sending out our own vibrations,
Hmm.
and the crossover of those vibrations with that around us is what produces our reality.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's the way those energies work with each other.
Yeah,
And how they mold with each other. And I think that what magic is and what spellcraft is intentionally moving your energy, intentionally gliding those vibrations into certain areas and knowing where they belong and knowing where they fit and knowing how to maneuver within those places. And that just takes, like, things like meditation and practice.
yeah. And that brings us back to your original statement of the need for personal attunement. Excuse
Hmm.
me, the need for personal attunement.
Yes.
Um, because that need for personal attunement before you get into magic is huge because you
Hmm.
have to be aware of what your energy is before you try and direct it into the spaces around you.
1,000%. You're not going to fit in the shape that you aren't, right?
Yes.
So if you're not that shape and you don't necessarily know how to mold into that shape yet, then you're going to jump into you're going to jump into a craft, and you're going to try to make money happen immediately, and you're going to give up immediately because you're going to see that it's not coming to you the way that you want it to. There's a lot of inner work and a lot of attunement, as you've said, that has to happen first, and then discernment after that,
Yes.
to know where you want to go and how you want to get started.
Yes. And because there's so many different forms of magic, there really is no way or right way to get started with
Nope.
magic,
Mm-mm.
right?
You guys start at
Um,
however you want. I'm going to tell you right now, when it comes to regulating magic or gatekeeping magic, that is not something that we do
no.
here. I think that like I think that you can go and look and see what I would say the one right thing to do with magic, quote unquote, is to make sure it resonates with you. That's it.
Okay.
Right? Because and I only say that because if it resonates with you enough, then it's more likely to move your energy towards what you want, right? Because you're comfortable with it, because it feels good to you. If you see something that says you have to do this at 8 o'clock and then sign your name on the dotted line and put blood on the paper or something like some silly spellcraft stuff like that, and it doesn't feel comfortable to you, don't do it. Like don't jump into that if it's uncomfortable. What you want to do is do something that makes you feel comfortable, that pushes you towards the goal that you're trying to reach for your spell.
Yeah. And now, I guess something that we need to address is closed practices,
Yes.
right? What's your opinion on closed practices?
I think that there are cultures that have practices that belong to them.
Yes.
And I think that there's no there that full stop, like there's no in or out with that. While I say we don't gatekeep, there are cultures that do gatekeep specific things, and they are absolutely allowed to do that. We don't
Yes.
ever want to we don't ever want to appropriate anything. If you are interested in a culture, we would go to someone within that culture to do that craft for you, and that's if they want to. If
Yep.
and then again, if you want to learn it, that's another thing. You would have to go to someone within that culture to learn that thing. But there are
Yes.
many, many, many open ways, and you can even create your own ways of spellcraft. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Like one of the major ones that's common, and I feel like it needs to be addressed, is the overuse of white sage, right?
absolutely.
People use white sage as this magical cleansing herb to rid their space of any negative energies. And I'm not going to lie, for years while I remained uneducated when I
Hmm.
was young, I did, right?
Hmm. So did
And
I.
it wasn't until, fairly recently, within the past year, actually further, like closer than that, probably than the past 6 months or so, that I
Hmm.
really started to understand the impact of using things that one don't belong to my culture, but also two, I shouldn't be using for the fact that it is what is that word? It is,
Going extinct.
thank you.
Yeah,
It
yeah, a
is
thousand percent.
going
I completely
extinct.
agree with you. I completely agree with you. I think it's really important to learn about what you're working with too. I think that that
Yes.
is super important. I think that if don't go into things super blind, and that's why I say attunement and research is super important. You don't have to, like, I'm not saying like you have to research what diameter you need to face your crystal for it to be like that's not that's not something you necessarily have to do. But when you grab things like plants, like sage for instance, research what that plant is and what it's connected to. Candles is a whole different thing. You can create candles yourself. You could grab a candle from anywhere. Like you could use a candle for anything, right?
Agreed.
But when it's something that you've seen this happen in on theatrically, like in movies, on reservations, like don't do things that you already know is connected to a tribe. And if you can, do as much research as you can regarding those plants or regarding that spell that you saw somewhere.
Yeah.
I hope that
Yeah,
makes
and
sense.
I'll Yeah, and making sure that it's coming from ethical sources too,
Yeah.
right? I mean, going back to that white sage, it is an endangered kind of herb right now
Yes.
because of its overproduction.
Hmm.
I mean, overproduction because people who are not within the culture are utilizing
Just
it
using it.
because they're not doing the proper research.
Yeah.
So it does bring us back to make sure that you're making informed decisions on the things that you want to use within your practices, right?
Hmm.
Magic can be insanely healing, but at the same time, you don't want to appropriate or contribute towards endangered
Yeah. That was the word
things.
that you were looking for, endangered.
Endangered, yeah.
I was like extinct.
Um, yeah, no, it's not extinct, it's endangered, but you don't want to contribute towards that. So
Hmm.
being mindful of that before you go in, and then again, you're walking in with a clear conscious and
Yeah.
a set intention that what you're doing is already higher vibrational
A
because you're
thousand
following
percent.
that.
1,000%. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, we've talked a lot about symbolism, right?
Mhm.
And how candles can work, how colors can work, how different herbs can work. But all of that essentially comes down to your intent. Yes, the energies have their own, or the items have their own symbolism, but that also comes down to a matter of perspective, right?
Mhm.
Ask someone what red means in the United States versus halfway across the world, and you're going to
Might
get
be
two
something
different
different.
answers. Yeah.
Yes.
Some cultures you nod your head up and down to mean yes. Some cultures you shake it yes, they're left and right to mean yes, right?
Mhm. That would confuse the heck out of me. But yes.
Yes. Me too, honestly. But it more just highlights that cultural perspective and cultural understanding ultimately does also lead to the symbolism that you're going to use.
Right.
So, something that for you looks comfortable and for
Mhm.
you looks as an accurate representation for an energy may not be the same as your brother, your sister, or your friend, your cousin, or someone halfway across the world.
1,000%. I completely agree with you. I think that when it comes to when it comes to symbolism, when it comes to things that work, it's going everyone's someone once told me that your viewpoint, no matter how close you are with someone, no matter how connected you are with someone, no matter how bonded you are with someone, your viewpoint is still going to be vastly different from theirs.
Yes.
The words they used was there's a vast ocean between your perspectives. And I so the way you see something and the way someone else sees something is going to be different. That's why I like to say it's a really good idea to have a notebook when you're starting your spell stuff, or when you're starting to become a witch, or you're starting to do magic, whatever you want to call it, right? Because the first thing you want to kind of start with is a database, right? You want to start with like, oh, this red color, you know what? I actually associate that with love instead of groundedness,
Yeah.
or ooh, this crystal, I actually associate this with this amethyst with protection instead of, I don't know, whatever else you associate with amethyst,
Spirituality.
right?
Yeah.
Spirituality, yeah. Like you start to make something tailored to you, and that's what makes you powerful, is like your uniqueness in magic. That's what
Yes.
really brings the power to you.
Yes. Rather than adhering to maybe set traditional standards, which can also be just as beneficial, again, depending on the intent that you put into them,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um,
Absolutely.
if set standard traditional practices work better for you, maybe that's better for you,
So be it. Yeah, I
right?
agree. Yeah, I think that some people like to create their own thing. I'm one of those people. Like, I'm outside of the box. I like to say it's because I have so many different I'm a like so many different cultures in me. Like, I'm Irish, and I'm Sicilian, and I'm, black, and I'm so many different things that, like, I pull from Celtic, and I pull from, like, from African, like, I pull from different kinds of spellcraft. So, like, I'll my box is huge. But there are some people, and not to say that that has anything to do with anything, you guys can be different for whatever reasons, right? But some people like organization. Some people
Yes.
like to follow one track. That's what helps them the most. And that's why we go right on back to whatever resonates with you,
Yes.
whatever feels good to you. That's what's
Yes.
important.
Yep. And me personally, when I practice my magic, I connect with the deity Freya, right?
Hmm.
She is my goddess. She is
Hmm.
my woman. Um,
We love her.
she we love her, right? She's the goddess of magic, right? So I connect with her through magic,
Right.
but I only practice magic one of three ways. I practice it with spell work, with
Hmm.
candles, right?
Hmm.
Candle spell work. I practice it with rune magic. And then my third is astrology magic,
There you go.
right? So I have set definitive ways, and that works for me. That's where I've
Hmm.
found my power. But you,
Yep.
like you said, Lorena, you've got a whole trunk full of different pieces that
Yeah.
you're throwing things behind you to. Oh, I know I've got a practice in
I
here
remember,
somewhere that
yeah,
has this in it.
exactly. I remember even with you, like, I have rune cards, And for like a good minute, I was sitting down learning the rune cards for no reason. Like the whole day, it was like, okay, all right, something needs to happen here. There's some kind of magic that I need to do. There's some kind of craft coming in here, some kind of divination coming in here because I'm being called to these rune cards. And so I sat there for like 4 hours learning the rune cards just to find out that it was his deity. Just to find out that it was Corey's deity trying to get me to talk to Corey. And I was like, so yes, definitely like connecting to those things is it's interesting. And I do jump into different things all of the time. You made me think about that when you brought up the runes.
No, but it is beautiful. And that's where you also need to go with what your intuition is telling you,
Yeah.
right? Because in that moment, you didn't need it for yourself, but you needed it to be able to direct you to me,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. You know what I
Um,
think? I think what's really funny is now that we're talking about this, I do believe that a question that would pop up for me is, and especially in the beginning of my craft, was how the heck do I know what my intention looks like or my intuition sounds like? But I think that goes right back to saying like whatever you're drawn to. That's
yes,
usually your intuition. Whatever you're drawn to, as long as it feels good to you and you don't feel restricted or you don't feel, confined, you might be good. Does that make sense?
it does.
Yeah.
Another way that I can put that, and this is early on, I had to really discover what my intuition felt like to me, and I
Mm,
realized that I discovered my intuition through the choices that I presented to myself. So let me
mm,
clarify. Because I know that sounds confusing. But what I would do is I would say, do I want a burger or do I want fries for lunch? Right? Because I have $5 in my pocket. I can either get burgers or I can get fries. I can't get both, right?
right.
So I'll ask one of my coworkers, do I want burgers or do I want fries? And they say, you want fries. Nah, I want to get a burger. Right? I knew intuitively, I knew instinctively I wanted that burger, right? I was looking for outsourced validation for that
Mm,
though.
mm-hmm.
So following that initial instinct before searching for that outsourced validation is where you find that intuition. And that's where I found mine because I was
Yeah,
doing
that's
that with,
well worded.
yes,
Yeah.
like not looking towards like, okay, I need this to happen in order to confirm that that's my intuition,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right?
Yep. Yep. Yeah, 1,000%. I think, yeah, just go with your first mind. That's what I tell everyone. Your first
Yeah,
mind is usually right. Your first mind usually knows what it wants to do. Um, Obviously regulate yourself first, work on the inner healing and all of those things, but yeah, go with your first mind. Usually your first mind knows what you want.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Unless you're in a manic episode.
Yeah, 1,000%.
um,
We're
like,
saying this
oh,
for people who already kind of know themselves, but but
yes,
first work on knowing you and then go with your first mind.
yes. Okay. I want to preface neither one of us are trained medical professionals or psychologists, right? If you believe as if you are suffering from any sort of ailment, physical, mental, anything of that nature, please, please, please seek out medical advice and medical counsel. Do not use this as professional or medical counsel, right? This is merely an introduction into how healing magic can be for a personal level on a almost self-actualization level, not on a medical professional healing journey. Okay. It
Mm-hmm.
should always be paired with something like psychology, counseling if you're using it for mental illnesses, or paired with a physician if you're using it for physical ailments. Okay, y'all?
Speaking about medical and like uh kind of mixing that in with discernment and knowing your first mind and things like that. One of my favorite uh things when it comes to spellcraft is moving into like physical healing, right?
Okay.
And like what physical healing looks like when it comes to the craft, right? Like for example, we have a bunch of herbs that are really good for, again, this is still based intentionally, but like we have a bunch of herbs that are good for relaxing. Now, we were talking and you were just saying, go to a doctor first, so on and so forth. And I completely agree with that. Go to a doctor before you do anything. If you're sick, go to a doctor. Don't go to herbs. Okay.
Go to a
I
doctor.
mean, those I think it's super important to know that the craft spellcrafting, uh magic, and those things are incredible tools to have to aid in your healing experience. I always say, and this is super important, that it's necessary to be physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally aligned. Physically, mentally, and emotionally aligned have doctors outside of the craft that can help you
Yes.
with that as well. So whenever you are doing this healing, know that like if you're trying to heal self or you're trying to heal a broken bone, let's just use a broken, that's the perfect. If you're trying to heal a broken bone, I do not expect you to grab chamomile and peppermint and wrap it into a bandage and put it around the bone. I expect you to go to the doctor, okay? I don't want you doing anything else but going to the doctor. And then when you come home, you can do those spells and those other things with what the doctor has prescribed you for things to work. What I would say is faster. Um, as we know, like let's say in like cancer hospitals, I don't know what the proper term for that is, but hospitals that take care of cancer patients, they have things like Reiki. They have rooms where you can get your like chemotherapy or therapies like that, and then after that you can go into getting holistic therapy.
Yes.
Because those are known to help as well, because you got to keep your minds caught up with your body.
Yes.
That make sense?
And it does. And that actually brings me to um, a common contradiction that people will make with magic is, oh, that's just a placebo effect. And I guess my rebuttal to that is, so what if it is?
Yeah. Why not both?
Why can't
Why
it be
not both?
both?
Is it hurting you? I honestly, I have had a lot of conversations about this on like social media and with people. What if the placebo effect is the magic? You know, like
Yes.
what if science just doesn't know how to put a word to it? That's very possible. And so the word is placebo. Because the placebo
Mm,
effect, whether it exists, whether it's something that exists or doesn't exist, doesn't matter because it's working, right? So you could call all of magic a placebo, and why does that have any less of a meaning to it, right? You still use it and it still works.
I love that perspective, and it makes me think of it simply is about believing in being able to channel the energy through you.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there are also chemical things involved in this, but it reminds me of like when a mother can lift a vehicle
Mm-hmm.
off of her baby's car or off of her baby, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever is
Mm-hmm.
happening. I know there's adrenaline involved in that,
Yes.
but it still pushes the human body beyond the point of normal comprehension,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And there has to be some intention involved with that. The
Yes.
adrenaline doesn't pump, that doesn't happen unless there is
Without.
an extreme intention behind
Yeah.
it.
Yes. 1,000%. I do, and I want to agree with that. Our our even sometimes our intent, that's a very interesting example that you used, because you think about how careless that intention has become. It is not thinking about outward issues. It is not thinking about what everyone else is thinking about it. It is not thinking about anything but this has to be done right now. And then
Yes.
it gets done. You know, like the body makes sure it gets done. And like the adrenaline, the release of everything, they extreme, yeah, you're extremely frightened, you know, you're extremely aggressively like I need something to happen, but you had to care enough for it to become that.
Yes.
Again, letting your intention without any restrictions work shows you how strong you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like that what is it? The indomitable human spirit.
What is that? Yes.
So it's so it's just
I love
something
that.
that I've seen like online where um basically it's the human spirit is just capable of great things when it's pushed to a length where it feels as if its existence is threatened, or it feels as if its own
Mm,
entity, its own energy is at risk,
mm.
right? Its life
Yeah,
force is at risk.
I love
And
that. I might use that more often. When I
yeah,
see someone do some wild stuff, I'm gonna be like, "Oh, that's the abominable." I can't even say it. Abominable
I,
snowman.
Abominable. Hold on, I gotta look it up.
Abominable. Yeah. Abominable human spirit. I love that. I think that's really cool.
Indomitable, indomitable,
Indomitable. Okay, got you.
indomitable human spirit.
I love
Yep.
that.
It's an axiom expressed in memes about the power of human will and perseverance against the indifferent cruelty of the universe. The term
Yeah.
and a catchphrase were popularized by mimetic use around mid 2022, which spurred a series of wholesome memes about the value of hope and love in a difficult
Mm,
world.
mm. Interesting.
That was as produced by knowyourmeme.com, just so
Taking
I'm
from
not
source.
plagiarizing.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
But yeah, I think that it is a good representation of what magic is at its core. It's just taking an intention and being able to direct it, right? The intention of never not being able to be beaten down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being able to take the hope and love that exists within you
Mm-hmm.
and turn it into power for
Mm-hmm.
creation.
Yeah, and I think it's beautiful. I'm still a little bit stuck on like the idea of that freeness. I think I've jumped into something and a whole new thought process now because being so non-restricted with that and then being able to lift a car, is it's honestly a beautiful thing. I know we can't always ignite that specific thing, but I think it says a lot to don't worry about what's going on around you and don't allow those things to kind of stop you from creating what you believe in,
Yeah,
because look at how powerful we can be when something we care about is possibly in danger,
yeah.
so yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. And even that goes down to like if you look at that now apply it to like medical, right? Because not everybody is going to resonate with the whole magic thing, right?
Yeah,
And if you're looking
100%.
for a scientific explanation to see how this represents, look at post-surgery care patients,
Mm-hmm.
right? The quicker and more apt that they are to put in the
Mm-hmm.
work to, okay, let's get on our feet, okay, let's get rehabilitated, the more intentional and more energy they put into that, the
Mm-hmm.
quicker their body heals and gets
Yeah.
stronger, and the quicker they're able to get out of that rehab facility,
Yeah.
right?
I've noticed that too. And I always say, like, I think more hospitals and more rehabilitation centers need more light working type people who are like, okay, you've made it past the hardest, or you've made it past the work that needs to be done on the outside. Now let's do the work on the inside, right? Let's bring your cheeriness up. What makes you happy? You can put your favorite show on and get on that treadmill. Like you could listen to your favorite music and start to work out whatever's wrong, your arms or whatever needs to be physically fit, have things around this person to bring up their emotional fortitude, because I think that pushes them too, their spiritual fortitude, because I think that pushes them too. Yeah, I think that in itself is energy work, that is magic.
Yes, yeah.
Um,
And that's the biggest thing that I guess we're kind of trying to come across, or like at least so far, is magic is simply intentional energy work.
yeah, it
That's
is.
that's all it is. Like
Yeah,
it sounds so simple, but that's all it is.
it is. And it's a
It really
beautiful
is.
thing. And I can honestly say, like, again, going back to some of the beginning things we said here, you're always doing magic. You are always doing magic, and there are different kinds of magic. I want to say I like the idea of there being moving magic and still magic. And moving
Mm,
magic is magic that gets you up and going, and still magic is what keeps you in your bed and keeps you, like, stuck in one way. Like you cause, I think there's a lower frequency magic, I guess you could say, where your thought process will slow you down, or and stop you from doing what you want to reach. Like, and you're performing, you can likely, as long as, like, we're checking with therapists and things like that, you could likely be slowing yourself down with thinking like you can't do something, or like thinking like you're
mm.
not able to get to a certain place. So I think there's a lot of different types of magic in the sense of energy. Like, there's different kinds of positive energy and negative energy, like, yeah, or
Yeah. And
challenging energy even. So
yeah, and there comes down to that argument that our words are constantly spells,
mhm.
right? So every time you say, "Oh, I can't do this. I can't do this. I won't do that. I don't want to," like that is all contributing towards your own energy. I
Yep.
can't stand up and get this. I can't get out of bed. I
Mhm.
need to do that ritual. And here's the thing, magic should not be used as your go-to scapegoat,
Mm-mm.
right? It shouldn't be, I can't get a job. I'm just going to light my candle and then I'm going to go and take a nap. And then I'm just going to forget about it. And hopefully I'll wake up and there's
A job.
magically
There's an
a job
application
waiting for me.
accepted.
Yes. Yeah. No. No. You
Mhm.
light the candle, you submit the application, you go and knock on a couple of doors.
Mhm.
Right? You put
Exactly.
in the energy and the energy will put itself back into you.
Exactly. That's what we are, guys. That's what we are. I know the theater has made you think that it's not, but that's what we are. We are here to do the work. We are here to, like, we're physically here to not make things appear. If that's what we were here for, we would know that. You know, we're
Yes.
here to do the work, to put in the action, to be human.
Yeah. And I would also argue too that magic should never be used, and this is something I need to bring up because it goes towards our ethical considerations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we need to make sure that we're not using magic as a way to manipulate others for
Mm-hmm.
our own benefit, right?
Yeah, 1,000%.
Um, Not that I necessarily think that that's um, my opinion, right?
Yeah.
You can only manipulate others to the degree that they will let you manipulate them. So if you
Yeah.
come across someone who's not going to let you manipulate them, doesn't matter what kind of spell work you do, doesn't matter how strong, how many hours you sit there humming, chanting, and dancing,
It's not gonna work.
it's it's not going to work,
Yeah.
right?
And more than anything, it'll more than likely push you to continue trying to push them, which will push them into anger and into annoyance. And people wonder why, oh, why do they react that way? Like, there's a lot of instances where people will do a spell on their lover, and then they'll try to, like, the spell that they've done is now ingrained into their conscious, right? And so they start doing things that will get them more likable by their lover, but then they'll start, like, you'll see little pieces of what the person who casted the spell, is doing, start to annoy or get on the nerves of, or restrict, or just make it harder for that other person. And that's what causes that other person to be like, what the heck's going on? Why are you like this? Or even worse. Right.
Yes.
And so it's so funny how it works and how you see it working. That, like, again, energy work, people come back like, ah, you shouldn't have put a spell on that person. Absolutely. Because what you did was you forced yourself to try to force that spell to work. And then you caused yourself a wall into getting to know who that person really is, and for them to get to know who you really are, and you've turned
Yeah.
yourself into almost the enemy.
Yeah.
um yeah.
Yeah. My argument is magic should solely be used for the purposes of healing or self-attunement only.
Mhm.
Right? If you want to cast that love spell on yourself, right?
Mhm.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. You're getting
Yep.
consent. Consent is also a huge thing because remember, there's intention involved. If you are setting
Yep.
your intention upon somebody else without their consent, then their intention is not matching your intention and it's going to
Yeah.
set things awry. Again, we
Yeah.
have that idea of the two water droplets dropping and the crossover.
Yep, the crossover, that now you're trying to make that shape fit in a hole that you don't even know what the hole looks like.
Yeah.
You don't even know what shape the shape should be. And to 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 just give you a bit of an example of don't do this, guys. Um I Before I knew a lot about crystals and understanding any of those things, one time I was like, oh, this crystal, and this was completely pure intention. But this, I was like, oh, this crystal is for protection. You know what? I'm going to throw it in my fiance's bag. This was before he was my fiance. He was my boyfriend at the time. I'm going to throw it in his book bag. Right? It's for intention. It's cool. It's protection. I'm going to make sure he's protected and all that stuff. And I just kind of put my intention onto him. Right? He found that crystal in his book bag and he took it out of his book bag, and he was like, why is this in my bag? And and he was like, what is this doing here? He's like, no, don't do that. Don't put things in my bag. And I was just like, at first I was taken aback because I was like, I was just trying to protect you, but within that moment, I realized he didn't consent to protection.
Yeah.
And, like, he has his own ways anyway, so it's like assuming that he needed that protection was even, like, And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of like, hey, take a second. Like, take a second and think about what you're doing and what you really want out of this. If you want to be loved more by someone, sit down with them and talk to them.
Yeah.
But
And
use
then
that as your own spell work while allowing them to converse with you too and use their own spell work to get to know each other to see if your energy shapes into each other, fits into that hole.
yes, absolutely. And I think your example with you sending that crystal with him and then him
Mhm.
finding it and be like, don't push shit in my bag.
Yeah.
Like that is also an example of, like you said, that rebound effect when you don't
Yes.
get that consent, right?
Yep.
Because it still worked,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
instead it turned him into, okay, now I've got to turn on my protective lens on
Yes.
you and
Yes.
don't put this in my bag.
Yeah. Don't just put random stuff in my bag. Yes. I have
Right.
to protect myself.
Yes.
Yes. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was like so interesting. Like,
Yeah. I think it's a
after the
perfect
initial
example.
annoyance, I was like, you know what? He's not wrong.
That's a good learning example. It really is. It really is.
Yep.
So, making sure that you're being ethical with your magic and understanding that it is supposed to be for healing, and that was why we're doing this. Is magic is supposed to be for healing, and it's one of the greater tools that you can use for your healing. Using candle magic, using astrology, however it may be, follow your intuition. Don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily follow by a book unless you want to follow by a book. In that case, go and get a book and follow by the book.
A thousand
Um,
percent.
but do what works best for you.
Yeah.
Um, when it comes to the placebo effect,
Mm-hmm.
like we said, the placebo effect can be, and I love the concept that you introduced with the placebo effect essentially being a scientific term for us to understand magic. You know, that the
Mm-hmm.
placebo is the magic that the science can't understand. Why does the brain allow us to heal faster? Why does the
Mm-hmm.
brain allow us to lift a car off of the road with just adrenaline, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a lot of adrenaline. It's not like they're giving you a cup of adrenaline. Your brain is pumping like a few drops of adrenaline at most that's allowing you to do that. How is that the magic of that? You know, it's like if
Mm-hmm.
somebody came up to you and they gave you a thing with three drops in it and they
It's
said,
like take this,
this
and I like,
yeah, take this and you'll
yeah.
be able to lift a car. You'd be like,
What the
bullshit.
heck?
And you'd throw the
Yeah.
thing away, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the magic of that within our bodies allows us to do it.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different powerful ways to go about magic, whether it's candle magic, like I said, astrology magic, working with deities, just setting your intention. When people go and this can be controversial and I might get some heat for this, but I'm willing to say it, when you're praying over your food, right? That is a form of spell work. You're putting an
Yeah.
intention into your food. Allow this food to be blessed by the hand of your God, right? And then
Yeah.
you are ingesting that food, thus blessing you.
Yes.
Okay?
A thousand
That's
percent.
spell work.
I mean, you don't have to keep this one in, but ritualistically, I think going to certain places over and over and over again to work with one deity or work with one god or work with someone is a ritual, you know,
It
being able
is.
to ritualistically celebrate a holiday. That itself, just the consistency of it is a ritual in itself. You know, like
Yes.
I think that that itself is very much so spell work. It's very much so magic.
Yeah, whether it's an altar, whether it's a temple, whether it's a church, no matter where it is, whether it's a house. I've
Mm-hmm.
gone to churches that are the basement of somebody's house. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
kidding.
Yeah,
I've gone to a church that was in the basement of just somebody's big house,
I believe it. I believe
right?
it.
It is a ritualistic place and they go there every single Sunday.
Yeah.
So it's still a ritual. You're still going to a place in order to honor your deity, honor whatever energy that you're honoring,
Mm-hmm.
right? You are still practicing that spell work, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
still practicing that energy work,
Yeah.
right?
You're embodying that love. You're embodying that feeling that you're supposed to embody to get through the things that you want to get through, to be healed from the things that you want to heal from. That is what magic is. It is embodying, putting an intention in and then embodying. You want to go into church and feel love. You want to go into church and feel grace. You want to go into, these are the things that you're intending to feel, and you create that when you get there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. You manifest that emotion, and
Mm-hmm.
emotions are the quickest things that you can manifest, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Especially when we relate that to astrologically, the moon being the fastest of all of the the
Yes.
traveling rocks in the sky.
Yeah. And
Um,
manifesting that emotion will allow you to manifest things a lot quicker. It'll make your action happen a lot faster.
yes. Absolutely. So if you are looking into getting into magic,
Mhm.
definitely do it. Don't be afraid. Don't say, "Oh, I don't want to do it because it's scary." Don't, "Oh, I don't want to do it because it's the devil's work." It's the devil's work if you make it the devil's work. If you put the
Mhm.
intention of, "Oh, I'm going to channel demonic spirits," you will
Mhm.
channel demonic energy, and that demonic energy is simply lower vibrational energy that's going to wreak havoc in your life,
Mhm.
aka you are going to wreak havoc in your life by calling upon it.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. Very
So
interesting. It's a very interesting thought process when it comes to demonic energy or like things like that. I think there's demonologists who will say, uh maybe something a little bit different about demons and what they actually mean, what they actually believe. And then there will be, people who believe, hey, okay, demonic energy is evil energy, which is a valid thought process too. And because they believe that it is evil energy is going to be something, as you said, they're gonna create in their life chaotic energy or challenging energy. I like something that we do a lot, you and I do a lot, is use the term challenging, which I got from you. I never like to say evil energy or bad energy anymore because I feel like it's just challenging energy. And yes, you can create your own challenging energy.
you can.
Like you
You can
can.
be your own
So
challenge.
yes, exactly. So if you decide, hey, I'm going to work with demonic energy. If you decide to say that and you think of it the way that people think of demons on a social concept on a social basis usually, right? You're probably going to be like, yes, I want to invite that challenge in. I don't know why we would do that, but if you want, listen, I'm not judging how you do your work.
But I think it's also too, some people will unintentionally invite that challenge in, right?
Yeah.
They're sitting over a candle that the candle is supposed to be bringing them abundance. And the entire time that they're sitting over the candle, they're sitting and they're thinking about their worries. Instead
Yes.
of sitting and setting the intention of what they want to feel,
Yes.
they're, "Oh, I'm worried about my job and my job is doing this and I'm stressed and it's not paying this and then my bills aren't doing this and this is why I need the abundance." Instead of
Yeah.
focusing on, "I'm abundant, I feel abundant, this is what abundance looks like in
Yes.
my," they're focusing so much on the lack. So again, you have to go back to that intention, right? If your
Yes.
intention is focused on the lack,
Mm-hmm.
you will obtain the lack.
A
If
thousand
your
percent.
intention is focused on prosperity, you will attain that prosperity.
Yeah.
Okay.
We talked a lot about not doing things to other people, right? And I do want to add that there's a counter thing to that, which is don't let other people do a lot of things to you.
Yeah.
When it comes to magic, right? Because a lot of us look for leaders.
Yes.
A lot of us look for someone to follow so that we can understand things. It is absolutely okay to be guided through something, to be taught something, to go to classes for something. I want to reiterate, like, it's super important for you to pay attention to your discernment and pay attention to your feelings, and what resonates with you while you are going on this journey to begin to become your own energy worker or magician or
Whatever you want to call it.
which whatever you want to call it again. Um, but don't you know don't allow people to force their beliefs on you. What beliefs you
Hmm.
feel like connect to you and resonate with you are super important. But do as you please. Like do
Yes.
what feels right to you, in the right place. And again, back to like use your discernment. Don't allow yourself to be told how life should be because everyone's life is different. Everyone's journey is different. No one is exactly the same, and you will not do things the same way as the person who's taught you does them.
No. And the other thing too is, just to add on to that too, don't restrict yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Don't
Yeah.
restrict yourself.
Yeah.
Um, don't only follow that one person.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Learn from as many people as you can.
Yeah.
from as many people as you can.
And I'm not saying
There
we're not saying, like, if it's comfortable for you with one person, absolutely do it, right? If you were like, are you if you were good with this one teacher for a while, absolutely do it. But we as human beings, we do reach a point where we're like, okay, nothing is changing in this place, or nothing, I've gotten all the knowledge I can get from this, nothing is different. So maybe that means where you're getting that information from needs to change.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I think it also Ermi was talking about, or Ermi in one of my previous podcast episodes explained that when she was learning mediumship initially, she was learning from somebody who she didn't realize was unethical at first,
Mm.
right? Um, don't be afraid to just change, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you're in the middle of something and you're like, oh, this is three classes, and this person
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting really bad vibes from,
Yeah.
dip, dip really quick.
Listen to your first mind.
Yes. I want to touch back on you had said a keyword. You said don't let other people manipulate you, right? You
Yeah.
said don't manipulate other people with your magic, but don't let other people manipulate you. And I want to come back to that too, because I think that was a particularly powerful thing that we need to touch on.
Mhm.
Um, by believing that other people's spell work has power over you, you
Mm,
are giving them a window to have power over you.
mm.
Okay?
Yes, that part. I completely agree with you. One of my biggest things I say on my platforms is when someone comes in and they're like, "How do I break curses? How do I do this? How do how do I get away from, these people?" I don't care what you're into, whether it be spellcraft, whether it be energy work, whether it be regular life. No one has more power over you than you
Yes.
unless you give it to them.
Yep.
I always say that no spell can affect you unless you allow it to affect you,
Yes.
right? And can I just use a really interesting example because I think this is a perfect person. He's locked up right now. He's a rapper slash producer. We know his name. I don't need to
Oh
say
yeah.
it, but he has a giant tattoo of a goddess on his back.
Mm,
And this goddess is completely against the things that he's done to people. And now
yeah,
he's in jail.
yeah,
Like there are no one it and you would think, oh, it's because, and I want to say yes, it is because of the goddess, but in that same retrospect, it's because of the guilty conscience. So that my point for bringing that up is that guilt, that guilty feeling, that's the curse,
yeah,
right? That curse that you're so afraid of. How do you get over that? How do you get through that? Usually it's because you might be guilty for something. If it's
yeah,
really getting to you and you're seeing the effects happening to you in real life, you're going to say, "Oh, I'm cursed. Someone cursed me." On a deeper level though, what could be bringing you down? What could be
yes,
stopping you? What could have happened in your life that you maybe have put away and hidden, that you're not working with, that you repressed, that maybe you need to attack and admit or come to terms with so that you can move past it. Again, magic is a flow of energy, right? If you're
yeah,
holding on to a specific energy and then your ex-girlfriend curses you because you cheated, that guilt and cheating is what's going to activate that curse.
yes,
Does that make
absolutely.
sense?
It
And that
does.
is what you're going to see. To break things like that down, you have to know, one, that you are more powerful than those things, but you also have to know how to um, use your own discernment and be as authentic as you can with yourself.
Yeah. And I think that also comes back to our original point when we were saying like, oh, that rebound effect, right? Where if you
Yeah.
send something to somebody and they are so clear intentional about who they are and what
Mm-hmm.
their energy is,
Yeah.
that it's just going to come right back to you because
Yes.
it's not meshing, right? It's
Yes.
not going in. The
Uh-huh.
energy that parallel, that crossover is not working together.
Yeah.
So it comes back to that same thing, and that concept applies to you as well. If you are so sure in your intention and who you are, right? Nothing matters about what anybody else is sending your way, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are the master of your own energy. Nobody else can manipulate it unless you believe that they can manipulate it. Okay?
Yeah. 1,000%. Yep.
So
I completely agree with that.
It's important. It's important. Be mindful of your own energy. Your energy needs to be priority. If
Mm-hmm.
you're a magic worker, right? Let's say you have a magic business and you make magic candles that have set intentions, and you are going through a particularly hard time, you need to be very mindful and potentially even take a break because you need to make sure that the events that you are experiencing, the emotions and intentions that you are going through, do not bleed into the work that you are giving other people to light in their homes.
Exactly. I completely agree. I think that there you that's very interesting that you say that, I think, because when I think of like people who've bought from other people, I've heard stories of people buying a bracelet from someone else and it being or a crystal from someone else and them getting like really weird like inner thoughts after purchasing those things. And I thought it was really interesting because I like let's just take a buyer for example. I know so or a seller. I know a seller and I know a buyer for that seller who received a crystal from that person and they said that they got really bad thoughts from that. And I remember thinking, well, I've seen this seller a lot and I wouldn't buy anything from the seller just because of I can tell the type of person that they are. I can feel it. I can hear the type of person that they are. So I think that inherently human beings have this ability to see, like, even if they don't know it. Subconsciously, we have this ability to kind of see how people really are. And
Yes,
that can come out when you're using things that are subconscious, like the work of a crystal, right? Where the crystal does what it does, but it's basically connected to your subconscious. While
yeah,
remembering where you got that crystal from and your subconscious being activated on that person and what you feel regarding that person, plus this crystal, I hope this makes sense.
it
Plus
does.
this crystal's work, you are more than likely going to have weird thoughts and weird motivations and weird understandings because you've bought from someone that you inherently knew, oh, he's a little or she's a
Yeah.
little, you know, and now the crystal is now deeper into that subconscious, activating those weird and creepy and odd thoughts.
Yes. And this is also where making sure you're sourcing your products ethically is important, right?
Yeah.
If you're sourcing, let's say, diamonds, where diamonds may be procured from some sweatshop halfway across the world by God knows who they don't
Yeah.
actually care what they're doing. They're just
Mm,
chiseling away, earning a dollar that they have to make in order to survive.
mm,
It's going to be vastly different than maybe you go to somebody who goes and procures their own crystals, right? Maybe they
mm,
go to create caves down in Mexico and they chisel their own. Like the crystal shop that I go to, they
mm.
actually take twice a year, they go and they take I think it's an
The
excavation.
excavate. Yeah.
Yeah. They go and
Yeah.
they excavate a bunch of different crystals,
I
right?
love that.
And they do it ethically and they make sure they're doing it in areas that are not depleted, right? They're
I
not
love that. Yeah.
depleting any sources and they're doing it with intentions that I know when I get those crystals from the moment that they've been touched by human hands, the intention has been pure.
Yeah, that's yet again, that's another intentional thing, right? Where you are looking for the intentions behind the things that you buy because that will help your subconscious feel good, which will
Yes.
cause more work to happen underneath.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Healing work.
So intention, magic is intention. And if you set the intention that you want to heal, and you set that intention throughout the entire process of looking at yourself, seeing yourself in that higher vibrational state, lighting the candle for that higher vibrational state, attuning to yourself for that higher vibrational state, whatever sort of magic you're using, doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever deity you're working with, whether it be God, Freya, Apollo, Hermes,
Yep.
does not matter who it is.
Nope.
You work with who your intention tells you. You work with what your intention tells you to work with. You work how your intention tells you to work. If your intention tells you to work by the book, you go work by the book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And again, remember that intention is what your gut feeling tells you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And remember that
It's
your intention can change. So
yes.
you can work by the book one day and then your body's just like, I don't know if I like this anymore. I'm gonna move to something else.
Yeah.
Follow the flow.
Yes, absolutely. And make sure that you're being ethical every step of the way.
Yes.
Reminder, if anybody gives you any contradictions along the way, oh, that's just placebo, we've got two arguments there. The first method is the one that Larina proposed, that the placebo effect is simply magic that we are attempting to understand, like
Yes.
something we cannot understand. Why our brains can heal ourselves quicker with a placebo effect, we've still yet to be able to scientifically determine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other option to that is, so what if it is placebo? If
Yeah.
somebody comes up to you, so what if it is? If
Yeah.
it works, what does it hurt? If
Yep.
it's healing, what does it hurt?
Yep.
Right? So it doesn't really matter which way you approach that. I love your perspective of it
Thank you.
being science that we have yet to understand.
Yeah, one of my favorite things, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, one of my favorite things to say to all of my clients is when they're like, oh, that could have been my logical mind, or oh, that might be placebo. I always, always say, why not both? I
Yeah,
always say it because your logical mind, to hear that you seeing, I don't know, Hermes in your mind, right? And he's telling you you need to stick to your guns and to your words and be true to yourself. Like I feel like that even if it is your logical mind, is it wrong?
no,
And it's like if
yeah,
it's not wrong and it's not hurting you or anyone outside of you, why not use it and let it be magical?
exactly, exactly. And then go from there and see if you want to find a community, find a community. There's also, I want to touch on this just really briefly.
Yeah.
There's such an almost imposition upon people who are getting into spellcraft that, oh, you need a coven, you need a community, you need a group of people to. No, you don't.
Mm-mm. You don't.
You
You
don't.
absolutely do not have to have a community. I know we like to do things in herds sometimes, but I promise you, some herds are going the wrong way and facing the wrong things, and it might not be a herd that goes the same way as you. You know,
Yes.
like you more than likely. I'm an individual who I've tried to have friends, but like we all have baggage and we all have different things that we're bringing with us.
Yeah.
So when I think about this, I think like, yeah, you could have people that you jump into, you get to know them, and then they teach you something, and then you jump out and you go find something else, or you take what you learned and you go on with your life learning more things. It is okay to join a community. I
It
absolutely
is.
say you can join a community in the beginning to get you like your head into certain things and to get your feet in, but you don't have to do that. There's YouTube. We have the world wide web, guys. like
Yes.
like we have so many things that you can just go in and you can say, what is this? And you can read different things and see what resonates with you and use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And while you were talking about the difference between like following a herd versus like following like your
Yourself.
own individual path, I was
Yeah.
thinking of the difference between a sheep and a bull. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
this is me in my brain. I always create analogies. I don't know why. I just create analogies for everything. But you can be a sheep where in the middle of a storm, they do best by gathering together in a herd. You just see
Yes.
a giant glob of sheep. They keep each other warm, they keep each other safe.
Hmm.
Okay? That's okay. It works for them. It's okay to be a sheep if you're a sheep, right? And I don't
1000%.
mean that as like, oh, don't be a sheep. I mean, like, if you need to follow the community, it's okay.
Yeah,
Follow that
that's totally fine.
community.
Hmm.
But on the other perspective, the bull runs through the storm to get out of it quicker rather than sitting in it and sitting
Yeah.
through it,
Yep.
right? And it does so independently.
Yes.
So
100%.
if your path is to be the bull and charge through the storm to get to the other side and get to the knowledge that you need quicker, then be the bull. But if
Beautiful.
you need to be the sheep that has a community, be the sheep. There's nothing wrong with either.
No,
There's
at all.
nothing wrong with either.
At all. I completely agree with that. Do not ever shame yourself for one thing or the other. If you need to do things, you need to do things alone, do it alone. I always say it takes a village for a lot of things. It takes a
Yes,
village for a lot of things. We are human beings still, and we have herd tendencies.
we do.
Those are not bad things. Doing things alone all the time will cause you to be in the same like echo chamber, but also being in a community for too long will cause you to be in the same echo chamber. So always go back and forth and always visit different communities. Don't allow yourself to be stuck in one. Get perspectives from all over the world. There are too many people on this planet, and this planet is way too big for you to always stick with one thing. If especially now, it's okay to stick with one thing, but especially if you're starting to come to this realization that that one thing doesn't necessarily stick with you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep.
So do with what your intuition and what your gut tells you. Follow
Yes.
what your gut tells you. Your magic is all gut work. It's all intuition work.
Yep.
Okay? So follow that. You will find your people or you will find your path, right?
Yeah.
One or
Mm-hmm.
the other, or you'll find your people along your path,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
There's so many different ways that you can go about it. Um, I
I just
think,
I
nope,
think you're
what were you
correct.
gonna say?
I was gonna say I just recently, yesterday finished my last energy healing class for my energy healer students. And I think one of the most important things that I've done within my community is allow them to go be free afterwards. You can always come back and talk if you want to come back and talk. I'm not necessarily, I'm coming to this realization that I'm not necessarily a teacher more than I'm going to give you some information. We're going to work together, have some fun. We're going to find the light within you. And then once you find that, you're done with me. But I'm still here. Like you can
Yeah.
come check on me and ask me questions if you want to, but at the end of the day, that light was found. You figured it out. Now you do something with it. You do what you want with it. If you need a little guidance, you can always come back to me. But I want you to go out into the world and create your own things with who you are. I don't want to guide you. I don't want to force you to follow me. Um but one thing I do is I allow them um to create a sacred space um before they leave me. So what I did yesterday, I was like, okay, you guys have a grounding tool, which is something for their energy work, something to ground them, to keep their feet on the ground. So I always recommend having a grounding tool. One of my students has her glasses. Her glasses are her grounding tool. Whenever her glasses are on, she will always stay grounded, according to her. Right? Whenever they're on her,
Mm,
whenever they're near her. Right? When she takes them off, she's ready to go meditate and talk to the gods and all of those things. But as soon as she puts it back on, she's back at home. She's back in her room. She's ready to go. Right? A tool that brings her back to earth. Right? Because sometimes when you're doing meditation and energy work, you get up there, go into the trying to figure things out, and then you come back down. You have to come back down.
yeah.
Um, but I think it's super important to have to start. You don't have to do this, but start with something that's sacred to you.
Yes.
You know, have a grounding
Absolutely.
tool, because a grounding tool, no matter what you're doing, no matter what community you jump in, no matter what exploration you go through, and whether it's spellcraft, whether it's demonology, whatever it is you're doing, you have a tool to come back to you, to bring you back to earth. Because again, I've said this a couple times throughout this now, you're human.
Yes.
And a lot of the time while we're trying to do magic, we forget that we're physical beings,
Yes.
and we have physical things that we need to ground down to, because that's what we're here for. We're here to be physical, but also, I think, in my opinion at least, here to be physical, but also to learn how to use and manipulate energetic things.
Yes, I 100% agree. We are physical human beings. We chose to
Mhm.
incarnate into the 3D realm. We have to utilize our 3D resources and
Mhm.
exist within the 3D realm. We cannot choose to
Exactly.
exist within the 5D constantly. That's why
No.
we don't sleep 24/7,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So it is important to be very, very, very practical and grounded. And I think having your space or having a set, even item that'll
Mhm.
help you do that is important. When
Yes.
I have like I have my altar, I have my space, I do my spell work. I know that that's my space, and when I
Mhm.
step away from that space, I'm on my practical world, right? I'm
Yeah,
I'm living in this realm, right?
a thousand
Um,
percent.
so I think that was a very pertinent item to bring up. I
Mhm.
thank you for bringing that up.
No worries.
So I think that actually goes over everything I wanted to go over. Is there
Yes.
anything that you wanted to specifically go over? Anything
No,
else?
I think that we've kind of crossed everything for, this episode. I would love to see you again. But I think this specific understanding spell work and understanding what it truly is and bringing a real life, understanding to it is super important.
Yeah,
So I am definitely 1,000% glad that we were able to do that.
me too. And thank you for being on here. We will definitely have more episodes with us going into different conversations beyond just magic. Maybe we'll
Heck
touch
yeah.
on a couple with astrology and a couple of other things if you're
Super
if you're
cute,
open.
yeah.
That'll be a future conversation. But where can people find you, Lorena?
Okay, yeah. So if you guys are looking for me, or if you want to learn anything about energy healing, if you're looking to get your own divination reading, I do all kinds of energy healing and divination reading. You can find me on TikTok at Larina.aligned. You can find me on Instagram right now. It's called Lunar Bloomers. So it's LUNAR bloomers. It's really cute. You'll see what it's going to create in a little bit. But yeah, those are the places that you can find me right now.
I love that. And as always, you guys, you can always find me at pathwaylightbycorey.com. I offer astrology and tarot services. Right now, I do not have any astrological mentorship programs open for application. However, I will have some coming up in the spring in the next couple of months here. And with that being said, I think that hits the final nail in the coffin and we can wrap this up.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again, Corey. That was awesome.
Absolutely. And thank you once again for coming on.
All
All
right.
right. Have a good evening, y'all. Or have a good day, evening, afternoon, however, whatever time you are listening to this at. Have a good day. Thank you for listening, and I will see you on next week's episode.
Bye, guys.
At the time of the recording, the Astrology with the Ancients mentorship program was not accepting any new applicants. At this time, applications are now open. If you are interested in learning the basics of natal astrology, including traditional and modern astrology, head over to pathwaylightbycorey.com to apply now.